Hi guys. Today we're going back to Afghanistan. We're going to be revisiting the actual, the in and out, the daily actual routines of specific actual NCOs, non-commissioned officers, which would be anywhere from corporal to actual first sergeant, master sergeant, and their actual role in everyday actual activities around bases, around compounds, uh, fuel, uh, breaking down the specific compounds to actually start bringing the troops home. So believe it or not, a lot of actual cash, old card cash, American dollars, actually, uh, it's in play in actual uh, villages out in Afghanistan. And a commander has to have access to actual cold hard cash to offer to elders of villages for information, for security, for actual even for to go through their actual property. And when this actually comes into play, you got cash floating around, or if there's actual contracts that can be actually offered to local native vendors, there's going to be, some nefarious and some actual corruption to go along with that. And some people speak on the on militarizing our actual border. That's actually different. That can never happen for the fact that if we still have to respect and actual honor the treaties that we have with Canada and Mexico. There's ways around it, but to fully militarize it, you, you can't do that. And people talk about it, you just can't do it. And for the fact that there's actual federal officers for that, there's actual agents that are actually trained. Uh, they're in a more higher background, higher actual knowledge of the actual laws compared to a soldier that's infantry, that's an actual engineer, transportation, so and so forth. So along this actual operation in actual Afghanistan, you come across some very surprisingly powerful people. For example, there's a first sergeant that was actually under the control, actually under the command of a master sergeant. The master sergeant is actually it's a 50-year-old veteran, and the actual first sergeant is a 43-year-old veteran. So this actual department, like the Concon department or actual team, uh, they were assigned to the humanitarian assistance yard, and that is for the purpose of if you have a actual uh, community that is in need of actual food, water, medications, they can have access to this actual yard, okay? And it will be distributed evenly. But in order for you to keep that actual yard stockpiled, you have to buy from actual local vendors. And these two individuals actually were in charge of offering contracts to these vendors. For example, if they wanted to supply rice, they would actually have the actual upper hand of choosing who will provide this actual rice. And along with that, bribes, kickbacks, payoffs started actually occurring, you know. And just between these two individuals, they actually they collected you know, over 100,000 in just actual in bribes because the contracts were worth about $30 million. And when you have the actual, uh, it's lucrative. It's a lucrative business because you're the only one that's going to be actually providing that rice. And this actual individual, from his master sergeant, I'm talking about the staff sergeant now, he actually collected 100 grand from him, a Rolex watch, and this actual sergeant sent back home gift cards, and along with them gift cards, he would have please stuff some cash, not a lot, not to make it obvious, and he would actually send it back to his wife, and she would actually receive the actual greeting cards, the care packages that they would send back home, so that way she can actually put it away, actually, take care of business. You know what I'm saying? And he actually bought a bought quite a few, you know, actual big purchases. He got that Rolex from that master sergeant, and he actually bought a Harley Harley Davidson bike, and apparently he bought it cash. And then we have another first sergeant. He was actually the actual paying agent to the vendors, actually supplying the actual uh, restocking the yard for the actual for example, the rice, right? So he actually collected quite a bit of cash, and the way he actually went about actual uh, laundering that money, he would actually send home uh, some toys, like a toy truck, a couple of toy trucks, which had hidden compartments with the cash inside. He sent it to his actual dad, to his wife, and actual an old army buddy of his that lived in a different state, and he also somehow they convinced this former army buddy to put him or put one of his I think his dad or his wife on his landscaping company in order to launder the money, so they would actually receive a check from this actual legit landscaping company from this old army buddy, but they would give him the cash, and then he would just launder the money and provide a check to this individual family member, so that way they can actually launder the funds that were coming in from overseas. And but one thing you have to really understand is our banking system, believe it or not, um, our paper dollar bills, they actually have a shelf life. So as soon as they actually meet a certain wear and tear or a certain date, they will pull that currency out of circulation. So now, depending on these local vendors, depending on actually how they use cash to actual pay these bribes off, that would be the key point for the fact that if they've had that cash, if they've been sitting on that paper money for quite a bit of years, and a lot of people do, and when it comes to actually pay somebody off and use them dollar bills, they'll actually be brought back into circulation throughout the actual country. Therefore, uh, the banks will pick up on that and actually can scrutinize it, can start asking questions on the actual matter. This $100 bills, they've been gone for over 12 years. Now they've reappeared, and they'll start the paper trail, and they'll actually start asking these banks exactly, time frame they came back into circulation, if there's any video of anybody making deposits, and so forth. So there is many ways you can actually pinpoint the actual person who's put them bills back into actual circulation. And a actual different soldier, same scenarios with that yard. And this was a 41-year-old Air Force staff sergeant. Again, they actually this one has a little bit of a twist to it though. for the fact that he was getting ready to actually be uh, signed, called back to the stateside, and there was actually a contract pending, and he actually insisted on making sure that a certain individual vendor received that contract, and they had agreed onto a specific bribery price. And after this actual Air Force Staff Sergeant came to the stateside, he still followed up to the actual to the actual who was actually operating his old job at the yard, and he would make sure that that vendor got that certain contract. Therefore, that vendor sent the bribery money cash to his wife via wire transfer, through actual pay service. It could be Western Union or direct deposit from bank to bank. But it was not an amount that actually could raise flags with the actual bank or the IRS. It was only 500 of the actual 35 that I actually had agreed to, and so they caught the actual they followed the money trail there, and that's how this actual Air Force Staff Sergeant um, came to light of actually accepting bribes, and I'm pretty sure that's the only one they actually pursued. He pled guilty, therefore they won't get him on the other bribes that he took. Because I know it wasn't his first one, so yeah, I have to consider that. And then we got to pay taxes on actual bribes. And this other one, it was a Lebanese service member. He also same scenario, accepted bribes for actual contracts, and it was just a pattern. And like I said, when you deal with money, people change, and it's not always for the good. Now, this other one here, this actual sergeant, this like staff sergeant, I should say staff sergeant, he was actually given the task of breaking down certain compounds around a bigger base. So if they had actual flanks covered on this actual uh, main U.S. base where the majority of the actual soldiers slept, drank, ate, and did the laundry, whatever, they would have little compounds surrounding for defense. So as soon as they started actually reducing the troop numbers in Afghanistan, this actual staff sergeant was assigned to break down the small compounds to prep withdrawals of the U.S. troops. And so this is where uh, you would want to ask, well, he would actually start breaking physically these actual uh, compounds, whether it be trailers, fans, anything that can be used again, or anything that had anything of value, they would actually sell off to local recycling vendors in Afghanistan for scrap metal. So he would actually pay them, but that has nothing to do with the actual money that he actually was trying to launder or try to send to the US, right? So when you're dealing with that much cash, for example, you got a little bit of side business going on and it's not that legal, but it's not that bad. And you got your little hustle going on, and and different soldiers get little hustles just to get some extra cash to do somebody's laundry. You take somebody's actual duty and they'll pay you cash for letting them get a good night's sleep, and then they'll actually do the guard duty for you. So it's just so forth, and you get a little cash. But I'm thinking that the people that were assigned to these compounds specifically, they at one point acquired large amount of money, and at the last minute decided not to risk it and have that money on their in their personal belongings on their person for the fact that they might get searched. So they chickened out. They might have collected the bribes, but they chickened out of actual transporting it back to the U.S. or back to wherever you're going to get assigned to. So they just left the cold hard cash in these actual compounds. So he would actually find the actual money and actually just send it home to his wife, along with laptops, along with actual different electronics for the actual through the army, and U.S. Customs caught it coming into Kentucky with the actual packages, and that's how he got caught. And this next one is actual an E4, an actual specialist. He was in charge of distributing the actual fuel. Uh, yeah, he worked at a fuel depot, and he actually was in charge of distributing actual three individual different bases with actual fuel. And he actually was approached by by locals and given the bribe, and they were getting like I think $5,000 per fuel trucks that he was actually supplying for these actual civilian actual trucking companies. And he actually directed his wife to open a bank account in a foreign country. Therefore, they thought it wouldn't be detected, but unfortunately, everything came to light, and he was actually stealing fuel from the actual U.S. government and selling it to local trucking companies, and that's a big come up for that's their biggest cost if you actually own a transportation company. And finally, this actual he was an engineer with the Army Corps of Engineers, and they're the ones that are actually building roads, building baseball fields, soccer fields, any kind of actual construction. They're the actual ones that actually will design it and actually uh, direct the actual building of these actual uh, facilities and including roads. And this individual actually received over $280,000 in bribes, kickbacks for a contract he actually gave to a construction company that started off as a $2.8 million actual project that ended up being billed to 8.1 million. So he actually kept this actual increase in hike of the actual bidding without anybody actually questioning it, without anybody firing this actual construction crew for the fact that it's way blown out of proportion. You go from 2.8 million to 8.1 million, and that's a big chunk of change from your actual first bid. And he suppressed all the actual red flags that people could have arose. Therefore, this individual company got a lot more than they actually bid for. That's a lot of money. That's a big chunk of change there. And these are just some of the actual ones that actually got caught or actually happened around this actual duty station for these actual troops. And this is just at the lower end. These are just actual, you know, nickel and dime. Once you start going up from there, you get to the politician side, and that's when the big kickdowns come in, and you start lobbying for actual jobs and I guess legalize corruption, bribes, which would be lobbying, right? Okay, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe.